Your job is to protect my image. And if I don't, then I'll ruin yours. But not in the way you think. My name is Max Avery, 28, professional extinguisher of other people's fires. Tonight I was under a chandelier the size of a car, staring at a man whose reflection lagged half a second behind his movements in the panoramic windows. It was probably the glass, or the altitude, or the way his voice curled around my spine and made every nerve stand at attention like an intern on their first day. The penthouse had the kind of view that made the city look curated, streets like strands of gold, the river a black ribbon threaded with lights. Every surface was immaculate, pale stone floors, leather the color of burnt sugar, a fireplace that breathed with a low infernal hum. The corners were soft with shadow, and the shadows seemed to breathe back. He stood in front of those windows as if he'd personally invented skyline. Eryx Kallistrate, hotel king, scandal magnate, and, if the rumors carried any truth, someone who didn't mind being called a monster, as long as the font was tasteful. Let's be clear, I said, loosening my tie like I was loosening a thought. You don't hire me and threaten me in the same breath. You hire me, then threaten me after your third espresso. His mouth quirked, a smile that didn't reach his eyes but made the room lean a little closer. Max Avery, he said, like he already knew how the syllables tasted. You left Hartley and Sloan because someone leaked your private messages to a tabloid. Your ex-colleague, I'm told, cruel, efficient, almost elegant. That's one word you could use, I said. I've been going with illegal. Forgive me. I have a professional interest in how reputations break. He turned slightly, and in the glass his reflection lagged again, catching up a blink later. The hair on my arms lifted like it was listening. I prefer to make them, of course, but anyone who wants to build must understand ruin. I was in a suit that still smelled faintly of bus exhaust and adrenaline. I'd walked away from the agency with a single box and a stubborn, badly ironed belief that honesty could still be engineered into a winning strategy. Eryx had called an hour later. The fee he offered would not only pay my rent, it would make my rent send me flowers. Let's talk deliverables, I said, because when in doubt, spreadsheet. Your team claimed you want narrative reframing. What's the exact nature of the crisis? Photos, he said, with the bored elegance of a man who's had his name in 6 continents and 3 languages. Of a party, of me at the party, of things I didn't do at the party. He lifted a hand, and the fireplace eased its breath. The details are tedious, the implications are not. Blackmail? Not yet. They want blood first. Blackmail requires patience. He glanced at me, the air around him shimmered like heat above asphalt. You think it's the air conditioning? I think it's very warm in here, I said, though a chill kept touching the back of my neck and withdrawing like curious tide. Do you always keep your thermostat on, hell? A sound that might have been a laugh flickered from him. The shadows in the corners seemed to ripple, amused, ridiculous. Losing your job and your reputation in 1 week makes you see shapes in everything. I keep it comfortable, he said. For me, there was a folder on the table with my name embossed in gold. Inside, NDA, contract, escalation matrix, media calendar, a meticulous dossier on myself that made me feel both flattered and medically examined. I skimmed the numbers. The retainer had commas in interesting places. You expect me to play the villain who turns heroic, I said. Strategic contrition charity campaign, tearful interview where you hold a rescue puppy that doesn't bark. The puppy always barks, he said. And, I don't cry well on camera. Everyone cries well if you light them from above. I looked at him. I don't do fake. I do true things that happen to be on message. True things, he repeated thoughtfully, as if it were an imported fruit he was deciding whether to order in bulk. Tell me a true thing about me, that you enjoy attention more than oxygen, I said. That your hotels are cathedrals to privacy, but you build them on the altar of exposure. You don't fear scandal, you metabolize it. The pause that followed felt like a coin rolling toward an edge. Interesting, he said at last. He moved, no, glided, to the bar. poured something the color of late summer into 2 cut crystal glasses. The liquid caught the room's light like it was hungry for it. "Do you know what it feels like?" he asked, handing me a glass. "To be watched by 1,000 eyes at once? To have their breath in your lungs and their pulse beating under your tongue?" "Sounds like anxiety," I said. "Ecstasy," he corrected softly. When he said the word, the window reflection caught up again, this time just a hair too slow, and my stomach performed a small, unhappy acrobatics routine. Attention is the only honest currency. I simply refine it, a polite way to say, I eat it. I took a sip. The drink was smoky, complex, infuriatingly good. "Here's what I propose," I said. "We frame the party as a security breach at a private event hosted by a charity partner. Release controlled footage, transparent statement, show you taking responsibility for lapses you didn't commit and fixing ones you did. No lies, contrition without theatrics. We pre-brief 3 anchors who hate you on principle, let them ask the hard questions first, on our terms. And, this part is key, no rumor feeding, no coy thrumming of mystery, we undercut the oxygen supply. You want to starve the fire." He leaned against the bar, elegant and sharp, like a statue that might start speaking fluent French. "Do you think you can live on truth, Max?" "It's not as filling," I said, "but it doesn't give you heartburn." He watched me with an intention that felt physical. My skin tightened under it, a violin string tuned a little too high. "Tell me another true thing," he said. I considered the city, glitter spread like broken glass. I considered the folder with numbers that could pay down the way my hands still shook when I thought about my former colleague hitting send on my private life. I considered the man whose presence pressed against mine like weather. "Another true thing," I said slowly, "is that you need someone who will tell you no, someone who isn't dazzled. You're hiring me because I'm notoriously difficult to dazzle." His smile finally reached his eyes. "Notoriously," he murmured. The room's shadows shifted closer, like listeners pulling their chairs in. You should promise not to threaten me again in the opening act. I'll save it for the encore." I put my glass down. My heart did that flutter that feels like an elevator changing floors too fast. "About your earlier promise," I said, flipping to the signature page. "If I fail, you'll ruin me, not in the way I think." "What way do I think?" "You think I'll spread rumors," he said. "Make you look useless. Destroy your prospects. Predictable, tedious, and beneath me." He took a step toward me, and the air between us thinned. "No. If you fail, I will do something far worse. Worse than public humiliation." He tilted his head. "I will make you irresistible." I laughed. I didn't mean to. It broke out of me in a startled bark, because underneath the velvet threat, the line was absurd. "That's your master plan?" I said. "Make me sexy?" "Not you," he said. "Your story." His voice dropped, intimate as a whisper in a crowded elevator. "I will make your narrative so consumable that you won't be able to breathe without someone writing it down. You will never walk unobserved again." Silence shaped itself around the words. For a second I heard the city more clearly, a siren, a horn, laughter that rose and snapped off like a match. Weight settled in my chest. I remembered the week my messages leaked, the strangers who messaged me apology and curiosity, and the occasional marriage proposal like they were all the same mints in a jar. "I'm not failing," I said. "No," he agreed, like he already knew the timeline of my next 6 months. "You won't." I signed. The pen was heavy, the ink slightly blue. The kind of detail a journalist would admire and call indicative. My hand steadied as I wrote my name, Max Avery, in the space between a promise and a hazard sign. The fireplace sighed. The corners of the room breathed. He reached across the table for the contract, and as his fingers brushed the page, the gold lettering of my name glinted brighter, like a camera flash without a camera. I looked up at him. It was ridiculous how beautiful he was. Not in a soft way. In the way a blade is beautiful when you catch it by the handle instead of the edge. "Ground rules," I said, because fear makes me administrative. No feeding rumors, using me as bait, no mysterious statement that turns out to be a teaser for your fragrance line. "I don't wear fragrance," he said. "I am one, of course you are. I stood, sliding the signed pages back to him. "We start tomorrow. I want full access to your media team, your security reports, a list of enemies who can spell their own names. And Eryx?" "Yes, Max? If your reflection keeps lagging like that, shut the blinds. We can't afford a ghost story." For a heartbeat he didn't answer. Then, noted, the shadows withdrew like a tide, leaving rocks slick and gleaming. He extended a hand. I took it. His palm was warm. The warmth climbed my wrist, settled in the place between my ribs I'd been calling panic for a week. I didn't love the word that occurred to me then. It was hunger. "Welcome," he said, and the city glittered at our feet like an audience. "Let's make them watch for the right reasons." The headquarters of Kallistrate hotels looked like someone had taken a luxury lifestyle magazine, wrung out all the imperfections, and built an office out of the glossy pages. Glass walls, marble floors with veins like gold filigree, and employees who appeared to have been genetically engineered for perfect posture and neutral yet alluring smiles. I passed a front desk where the receptionist looked at me like she already knew my credit score, my shoe size, and the tragic fact that I had ironed my shirt in a rush this morning. Eryx moved through the lobby with the ease of a man who designed it for himself, which in his case he probably had. People turned to look as he passed. Not just turned, tilted, as if pulled by the same invisible thread. The PR department was housed in a corner suite with a panoramic view of the harbor. Inside, 6 people sat in a sleek, glass-walled workspace. Every desk was a curated still life of MacBooks, leather-bound notebooks, and single-stem vases. "This," Eryx announced, "is Max Avery, our new external PR lead. He will be working closely with all of you to civilize the conversation about me." A ripple of polite laughter. The kind that said, "We've read the headlines." And then, I met Kyle. Kyle looked 25, but with the kind of grooming budget that could fund a small country. His hair was artfully messy in the way only blow dryers and expensive product can achieve. He wore a fitted navy suit, white sneakers, and the expression of someone who thought rules were excellent when applied to other people. "Max," he said, shaking my hand like he was testing the tensile strength of my grip. "Welcome. We've been coping." His glance at Eryx was quick and loaded, and not in a strictly professional way. "Have you?" I said. "I hear coping is the new thriving." Eryx's mouth curved, but he didn't intervene. Over the next hour I got the crash course on the incident. According to the sanitized version, a set of photos had appeared online 2 weeks ago, blurry but damning enough for the court of public opinion. They depicted Eryx at an invite-only party in a private villa. The location was undisclosed, but the decor screamed money doesn't sleep. The photos showed him in proximity to people currently under investigation for various financial crimes. Nothing illegal in the images themselves, but enough to suggest impropriety. Add in the fact that one shot caught him with his hand on a champagne flute held by someone known for laundering cash, and you had the makings of a minor PR apocalypse. Kyle pulled the photos up on his tablet and slid it toward me like he was showing off vacation snaps. Not his best angles, but the lighting's decent. "Decent lighting is the enemy in situations like this," I said, scrolling through. "You want grainy, you want shadows, you want plausible deniability." Kyle smirked. "I'll keep that in mind for my next scandal." Eryx, leaning against the doorway, watched the exchange with an unreadable expression. After the briefing, he and I moved to one of the glass-walled conference rooms. The table was a seamless slab of black marble, and the chairs looked like they'd been stolen from an art installation. Outside the window, the harbor glittered in the afternoon sun. "All right," I said, dropping the folder onto the table. "Your current strategy, if we can call it that, is reactive. You're waiting for the storm to pass, but this isn't weather, it's climate." Eryx tilted his head. "And your recommendation?" "Truth." The corner of his mouth ticked upward. "Truth never sells as well as a beautiful lie." I leaned back in my chair. "That's because most people can't make the truth look interesting. That's my job. We take control of the narrative. We admit you were at the party, because obviously you were. But frame it as a security breach at a private event. You were there for legitimate business. Got blindsided by the presence of certain colorful individuals. We position you as a victim of someone else's bad optics. His eyes narrowed, amused. You want me to play the wounded hero? I want you to be the wounded hero, I corrected. And if we do it right, you get sympathy, credibility, and maybe even a round of puff pieces about your commitment to ethical business practices. He considered that for a moment, fingers tracing the edge of the table like he was drawing a circle no one else could see. And you think the public will buy it? If we give them a better show than the scandal, yes. But I let the pause hang. We don't just put out the fire, we light one of our own. That got his attention. A controlled scandal, I said. One that shifts the focus away from the party entirely. Something provocative but harmless. We give them something else to chew on before they choke on this. Eryx's gaze sharpened. You're suggesting misdirection. I'm suggesting strategy, I said. Misdirection is what magicians use when they want to make you think the coin disappeared. I'm talking about making them forget they ever cared about the coin in the first place. For a moment the light outside seemed to shift, the harbor's reflection bending strangely in the glass wall behind him. He smiled, slow and dangerous. I think, he said, you might actually be fun to work with, Max Avery. Don't get ahead of yourself, I replied. You haven't seen my rider yet. From somewhere beyond the glass, Kyle's laugh rang out, low, knowing, and just loud enough for us to hear. Eryx didn't look away from me. Welcome to the turbulent zone. Was that in the job description? I asked. No, he said, the smile widening. It's in the fine print. The red carpet wasn't red, it was a molten strip of light, unrolling under the feet of 100 guests, who looked like they'd all been cast in a movie about wealth. Flashbulbs popped in staccato bursts, and the air smelled like champagne and ambition. It was one of those charity galas that pretended to be about goodwill but really existed for high-value networking and Instagram posts. The banner over the entrance read, Kallistrate Foundation Annual Benefit. I'd been to events like this before, enough to know the choreography. People smile without showing their teeth. They laugh at nothing. They scan the room for someone more important than the person they're talking to. But this was different. When Eryx stepped out of the sleek black car, the crowd reacted like someone had just turned the oxygen up. Conversations stuttered. Faces brightened. A woman in a diamond collar leaned forward so sharply I thought she might tip. As he walked toward the entrance, eyes followed him in perfect sync, like sunflowers tracking light. People's pupils dilated. A faint flush climbed their necks. Even the doorman, who had to be professionally immune to celebrity, looked as if he'd just been handed front-row tickets to something indecent. I'd seen charisma before. This wasn't charisma. This was chemical. Inside, the ballroom glowed in gold and cream, a cathedral of opulence. Chandeliers threw warm halos across polished floors. Waiters in black moved through the crowd like ink flowing through water. Trays of champagne catching the light. Eryx drifted through it all, trailed by smiles and lowered voices. Every time someone glanced at him, it was as if their attention caught on him like fabric on a nail. They couldn't quite pull away. I told myself it was branding. The man knew how to own a room. Then I opened the wrong door. It was near the side hall, meant for staff. I thought it might be a shortcut to the restroom. But instead I stepped into a dim, quiet space where the noise of the party muffled to a heartbeat. Eryx was there, alone, and the air around him was alive. A slow swirl of golden smoke coiled in from the open door behind me, the doorway to the ballroom. It wasn't real smoke. It shimmered, translucent, like heat waves over asphalt. It poured into the room and toward him, threads twisting together into a single stream that entered his mouth when he inhaled. His eyes were closed, expression almost serene, but there was something predatory in the set of his shoulders. Each breath seemed to pull more of that strange, luminous haze from the world outside. I stood frozen, pulse drumming in my ears. He opened his eyes. The golden light still danced faintly there, reflecting like embers. You shouldn't be here, he said, though his voice was calm. What was that? He glanced toward the door, then back to me. Attention, he said. Admiration, envy, curiosity. Call it what you like, it comes to me naturally. I simply take it. I tried to find a laugh, but it stuck in my throat. You're telling me you inhale gossip? Not gossip, reputation. The energy people give when they think about you, talk about you, watch you. He stepped closer, and the air between us felt warmer. I am a demon of reputation, Max. I thrive on being known. Whispers, headlines, outrage, it feeds me. Quite literally, that's... I searched for a word. Insane. He smiled slightly. And yet here you stand, seeing it with your own eyes. I shook my head. I do PR for a living. My job is to control narratives, to starve scandals before they grow teeth. You're saying you need the very thing I'm trained to kill. He moved past me toward the door, pausing just close enough that I caught the faintest trace of something, like the scent of warm metal and rain. Watch. We stepped back into the ballroom. He didn't speak. He didn't wave. He simply stood near the center, holding a glass of champagne. Within 30 seconds, 3 separate clusters of guests had turned to face him. Then more. Soon, the nearest conversation broke apart, and people began drifting toward him like the tide toward a moon. I watched it happen. Eyes lighting up, voices dropping, posture leaning forward. By the minute mark, there wasn't a corner of the room where his name wasn't being whispered. He glanced sideways at me, not even trying to hide his satisfaction. See? It was intoxicating, even from a distance. And it made my stomach knot, because now I knew exactly what I was working with. Not just a man who could spin headlines to his advantage, but a creature who lived off the heat of a scandal, who grew stronger every time someone speculated about him. My career had been built on defusing bombs, and Eryx was telling me, with a look and a sip of champagne, that he was the bomb. Somewhere under the chandelier's golden light, my professional instincts screamed to run, but my feet stayed exactly where they were. The press event was a masterclass in optics. The hotel's media lounge gleamed under warm lights, the air faintly scented with citrus and polished wood. Rows of chairs faced a branded backdrop, and the cluster of journalists looked suspiciously cooperative, probably because we'd prepped them with just enough exclusives to whet their appetite without making them suspicious. Eryx was flawless on stage. Smooth answers, relaxed body language, the occasional well-timed smirk that let the press know he wasn't cowed. He even managed to turn the party question into a humble reflection about the importance of ethical hospitality and client safety. By the time we wrapped, the headlines were already shifting. Kallistrate addresses party controversy head-on. Eryx Kallistrate, we must be better hosts. The word scandal was noticeably absent from at least half the coverage. Backstage I handed him a bottle of water. You were disciplined, controlled. I'm impressed. He twisted off the cap, smirking. And you're beaming like a proud parent. Should I expect a gold star? Don't push it, I said, though I couldn't help the little buzz of satisfaction in my chest. If we can keep this momentum for 72 hours, you'll be in the clear. We parted ways in the hotel lobby. I went back to my apartment, half expecting to pass out on the couch with my tie still on, when my phone began exploding. At first I thought it was more coverage from the press event. Then I saw the subject lines. Max, this can't be real? Dude, check Twitter, ASAP. I'm so sorry. The screenshots hit me like cold water. My private messages, months old, painfully personal, splashed across social media. The kind of conversation you only have with someone you think you can trust. Confessions about how much I'd been struggling, bitter jokes about the industry. 1 or 2 romantic admissions that made me want to peel my own skin off. The captions did the rest, twisting context into a narrative that painted me as desperate, unprofessional, pathetic. I knew exactly who had done it before I finished scrolling. Ethan, my old colleague, the one who'd been in the room the night my exit from Hartley and Sloan became inevitable, the one who'd said, "Don't worry man, I've got your back," and then didn't. I sat there on the edge of my bed, still in my suit, my phone hot in my hand. Every vibration was another nail in the coffin of my professional dignity. The call from Eryx came 20 minutes later. No greeting. I've seen it. Of course you have, I muttered. You know who it was, yes. There was a pause. When he spoke again, his voice was soft and terrible. Do you want me to take it from him? I blinked. And take what? His reputation, his name, his place in whatever food chain he's managed to climb. I can make it so he never walks into a room again without hearing the echo of his own downfall. The way he said it, like an offer of fine wine, made my stomach twist. "You're serious, Max," he said almost patiently. "This is what I am, what I do, you've seen it. I can pull every thread in his public life until it all unravels in his hands. No one will remember his name without remembering what I make of him." I swallowed hard. Part of me wanted to say yes. Part of me wanted to hand Ethan's career to Eryx on a silver platter and watch it burn. But that part of me was the same part that woke up in a cold sweat when I thought about losing control. "No," I said finally. "If you do that, I'm just like him. You're nothing like him." The conviction in his tone was almost convincing. "I am if I let someone else fight my battles in a way I'd never condone. We do this my way. We bury his noise under better stories. We win because we're smarter, not because we're crueler." He exhaled slowly, and for a moment the line went quiet. When he spoke again, it was with that faint curl of amusement I'd come to recognize. "You do realize morality is the least profitable currency in my world. Then it's a good thing I'm not here to make you rich." That earned me a low chuckle. "Very well. We'll play it your way." A pause. For now, the call ended, but the tension didn't. I sat there staring at my reflection in the darkened window, the city lights blurring in the glass. There was a crack now, small but real, in whatever tentative rhythm Eryx and I had found. It wasn't that I thought he was lying about who he was, it was that he didn't see why I might need to draw a line, and I couldn't stop wondering how long before he crossed it anyway. The office was different at night. Gone were the click of heels on marble, the low hum of voices, the constant ping of incoming emails. The only sound was the quiet thrum of the city through the glass, traffic a muted river of light, the occasional siren curling up the side of the tower. Most of the floor was dark, but the PR department's glass walls glowed faintly, lit by a single desk lamp at my station. I'd been combing through timelines, press releases, media spikes, social chatter, trying to piece together why every time we made progress, something else leaked to slow us down. The pattern was subtle, but it was there. An internal memo referenced in a blog post before it went public. A journalist knowing the exact phrasing of a statement we'd only just drafted. And every time Kyle was somewhere nearby, either just leaving a meeting or conveniently out when the leak hit, I rubbed my eyes, sat back, and looked toward the corner office. Light spilled from under Eryx's door. When I knocked, his voice came from inside, warm and amused. "Come in before I decide you're a reporter." His office was its own kind of stage. Floor-to-ceiling windows framing the city, shelves lined with rare spirits, and a desk big enough to hold a dinner party. He was behind it now, jacket off, sleeves rolled, reviewing something on a tablet. "You work late," I said. "You work later," he replied without looking up. "And you look like a man about to accuse someone of treason." I closed the door. "I think we have a leak. That would explain the occasional drip in my schedule," he murmured. "I've tracked the timing. Every suspicious incident lines up with when Kyle's conveniently unavailable or already in the loop on things he shouldn't be." That made him look up. His expression was sharp but not surprised. "Kyle is talented," he said slowly, "but not discreet." "That's generous," I said. "I think he's feeding information outside. Could be for money, could be for other motives." Eryx's smile ghosted across his face. "You're not wrong about the other motives." I frowned. "Meaning?" He leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers. "Kyle is infatuated with me, that's—" I started, then stopped. "Actually, that explains a lot. He's been here 3 years," Eryx continued. "Ambitious, observant, occasionally reckless. The kind of person who thinks proximity is the same as intimacy." "And you've never discouraged it?" One eyebrow arched. "I don't encourage it either. But his loyalty is conditional. If he's leaking, it may not be for personal gain. Someone might be using him." "Using his crush on you," I said. "That, or his resentment toward you." His tone softened into something dangerously close to playful. "You are, after all, the new favorite." I snorted. "Oh yes, the favorite. I'm the guy who keeps telling you no, that's why you're interesting," he said simply. The air between us shifted, quieter, heavier. He was studying me again in that way that felt like he was reading my biography off my skin. I broke it with a half smile. You should really define interesting, because you keep using it like it's interchangeable with irritating. Irritating can be charming, he said. That's not in any dictionary I've seen. He stood, walked around the desk, and leaned against it so close I could see the faint glint in his eyes from the city lights. You've noticed his attention, he said. His little barbs, the way he hovers when I'm in the room, hard not to notice when someone treats me like the unwanted sequel. His smile widened. It's jealousy, Max. And if you're wondering whether you should take it personally, I'm not. You should, he finished, ignoring me. Kyle thinks you're a threat to his relationship with me. And in some ways he's right. The word relationship landed heavier than it should have. I rolled my eyes. So what do we do about him, for now? Eryx's tone was light, but there was steel under it. We watch, confirm, and when we know, we decide whether to cut the string or see where it leads. He pushed off the desk, walking back toward his chair, then glanced over his shoulder with a faint smirk. Unless, of course, you'd like to challenge him directly for my affection. I barked a laugh. Affection? Please. I'm just here for the paycheck and the occasional free canapé. Keep telling yourself that, he said, settling into his chair. I shook my head, heading for the door. You're insufferable, and you, he called after me, are in denial. I didn't turn around, but I couldn't quite stop the smile tugging at my mouth. Even with a saboteur in the ranks somehow, Eryx made it feel like the game was still ours to win, if I could figure out which side of the board I was really on. The alert hit my phone at 11:13 a.m., a ripple in the social stream that surged into a wave before I'd finished the first paragraph. A new thread, receipts on Kallistrate's dirty deals. The receipts were photos, crisply framed, suspiciously convenient, of Eryx in private settings, exchanging an envelope with a man currently under investigation. Another image showed a stack of ledgers in his suite. The timestamps miraculously matched nights he'd been provably elsewhere. Metadata screenshots, the internet's favorite costume jewelry, dangled like proof. By 11:20, 3 bloggers were calling it the nail in the coffin. By 11:27, a cable show chyron had the word evidence in all caps. I stood in the corridor outside the conference level, pulse drumming. Even the carpet seemed to vibrate with the rumor. I forwarded the thread to our security lead, then called the AV team, then texted Eryx, "Don't post. Don't breathe online. Meet me backstage in 10. We go live in 2 hours." The reply arrived in seconds. 2 hours? Bold. Necessary, I typed. I'm not letting the word evidence stick. When I stepped into the green room, he was already there, in charcoal suit, tie loosened like sin in a movie, gaze bright and unreadable. The energy around him felt charged, like the air before a summer storm. You saw them, I said. I did, he answered, voice low. Clever forgeries. Almost flattering. Flattering is not the word I'd pick. I paced once, twice, then forced myself to stillness. We bring in our forensics consultant. We put the chain of custody timeline on screens. We show the originals from our hotel cameras of the same hours. We release the receipt logs that put you across town. We narrate the manipulation, where light is wrong, where the shadow fall contradicts the room's geometry. Truth, he said, almost fondly. And a better show than a lie, I said. I'll take questions. You'll answer a few pointed ones, but this is my stage. If you pull the room toward you, I looked him in the eye, dial it back. We need them thinking, not glowing. Something sparked in his expression, appreciation or mischief or both. I'll keep my hunger down, Max. I didn't think it was possible, but he said my name like a promise. By 1:10 p.m., the conference hall was a lit theater, banked cameras, a tumult of murmurs, screens glowing with our title slide. On fabrication and accountability. The front row was heavy with faces that loved a takedown. Kyle hovered at the sidewall, immaculate, phone turned face down on his palm like a secret. Our consultant, Dr. Mendoza, waited by the projector laptop. I stepped to the podium. Good afternoon. I'm Max Avery, external PR for Kallistrate. You've seen images circulating this morning. We're going to do something novel. We're going to slow down. A rustle, confusion, curiosity. 3 things, I said, holding up a finger. First, context. Second, evidence of manipulation. Third, verifiable data that contradicts the claims. If we do this right, you'll leave with fewer screenshots but more facts. Slide 1. The now viral photo of Eryx passing an envelope. I pointed to the table edge behind him. See that highlight? The light source would have to be at knee height to make that arc. This room's fixtures are ceiling mounted. Slide 2. A magnified reflection in a glass water carafe that showed a different wristwatch time than the timestamp overlay. Slide 3. Mismatch in lens distortion compared to other images shot in the same suite earlier that month. Dr. Mendoza took over for 90 seconds, crisp and devastating. Then the chain of custody, server logs, security timestamps, card swipes. The ledger photo? Date stamped on a day the suite was offline, confirmed by vendor maintenance records. The envelope exchange? A cropped still from a charity auction check handoff, original footage cued on the side screen. We played the 15-second clip. The room murmured again, lower now, skeptics shifting in their seats. Hands shot up. I pointed. June, you first. Are you denying any meeting with Sabatini? She asked, pen poised. Not denying, I said, clarifying. Mr. Kallistrate met him in public settings twice, both times at industry conferences. No private deals. Those agendas are public record. We've posted links. We're not allergic to sunlight. Then why the photos? Another reporter asked. Because a good fake travels faster than a careful truth, I said. We can either play whack-a-mole, or we can invite you behind the booth. Watch the hands. Watch the mirrors. A few people smiled despite themselves. I kept going. I won't pretend we're perfect. Security at private events is imperfect. But if you're going to accuse, at least accuse us of the right sin. And which sin is that? Came from the back. Overconfidence, I said. Possibly hubris. Never forgery. A laugh rolled the room. Sharp, unwilling, but real. I glanced to the side. Eryx stood a pace behind the curtain, posture easy but restraint humming off him like heat. When his eyes met mine, the room's noise dampened at the edges, as if his attention had drawn the volume down. He gave me the slightest nod. You're doing it. 2 more questions, I said. A man from a financial journal stood. If these are fake, who benefits? Anyone shorting reputation, I answered. Competitors, opportunists, bored arsonists. We're cooperating with investigators. What I can tell you is that this morning's drop was timed to coincide with a major charity announcement scheduled for this afternoon. I held his gaze. We delayed, we did not cancel. At 3 p.m., the shelter still gets its funding. By the time we ended, the headline scent had changed in the air, speculative to skeptical, skeptical to curious. I felt the shift like a physical thing, the way the tide reveals the sand it had been hiding. I thanked them. We killed the screens. The murmur rose to a conversational buzz as people packed up their curiosity and left. Backstage, the adrenaline left my body in a rush. I braced a hand on the wall. Eryx was suddenly there, close as a breath. You were... He searched my face, as if the right adjective might be hiding behind my eyes. Magnificent. Write it down, I said, because jokes keep my hands from shaking. He didn't write it down. He leaned in and kissed me. It should have been a quick thing, a celebratory brush of gratitude. It wasn't. It was deliberate, warm, a press of mouth that asked a question and didn't apologize for wanting an answer. Shock and relief collided in my chest. My fingers curled in his lapel without permission. The room narrowed to breath and satin and the smallest sound he made when I exhaled against him. I started, uselessly. Don't analyze it, he murmured, and kissed me again, deeper, until the rest of the day slid loose like a coat from my shoulders. We shouldn't have. We did anyway. The green room door clicked shut behind us, the hush inside amplifying everything else. The soft fall of my tie to the table. His hand at my jaw, coaxing my thoughts to quiet. The careful way I checked his eyes before I tugged him closer. Consent, a bright thread I didn't let go of. He tasted like mint and the echo of applause. "Max," he said against my mouth, like it was both a compliment and a confession. "Say it again," I whispered, and he did, and then there wasn't any need for words for a while. We moved with the inevitability of a plan we hadn't consciously made. Not frantic, never that, just a long-held tension unwinding in increments. The jacket I peeled from his shoulders, the laugh that escaped him when I lost a cufflink under the couch, the way the city's afternoon light turned him into shadow and heat. He was careful with me, which surprised me more than anything, the infamous demon of reputation, unhurried, precise, as if memorizing rather than consuming. "You sure?" he asked at one point, voice pitched low, and I surprised us both by smiling. "I'm not a rumor," I said, breathless. "I know what I want." After, we lay with our breathing synced to the hum of the building, the world outside resuming at a lower volume. I looked at the ceiling and thought about how quickly you can become someone who says after. His arm was a weight across my waist that registered in my bones as relief. "You know," he said finally, "I meant it earlier. I kept the hunger down." "I noticed," I said, turning my face to him. "Thank you." His answering look was soft, unguarded in a way that unsettled me more than any scandal. "Don't thank me," he said. "Just don't run." I didn't promise. I didn't need to. I reached for his hand and laced our fingers together, feeling the quiet answer the city gave us from the other side of the wall, a siren somewhere far away, a horn, a voice laughing at a joke we'd never hear. Outside, the news cycle would keep grinding, grinding, grinding. Inside, we were a pause between sentences. We stayed there a breath longer, and then the phone on the table buzzed, a calendar ping, at exactly 3 p.m. The charity announcement. The world reasserting its claim. "Back to stage," I said, sitting up, smoothing my shirt with hands that trembled for a different reason now. "Back to stage," he echoed, rising, retying his tie with practiced grace. He caught my eye in the mirror, and for once our reflections didn't lag, they simply looked like us. The city at night looked cleaner from this high up, like someone had laid a sheet of black glass over the streets and dotted it with light. From the balcony of Eryx's penthouse, the noise was a faint far-off hum, as if the world below had been reduced to background music. Inside, the place was all shadows and warm light. A half-finished bottle of something expensive sat on the coffee table. The fire was low, casting amber ripples across the walls. I sat on the edge of the couch, scrolling through my phone, my stomach slowly knotting with every new notification. The press conference had been a success, by every measurable metric. Headlines were skeptical of the photos, calling them questionable and sloppily fabricated. Some outlets had even run favorable coverage, praising Eryx's transparency. And yet the noise hadn't stopped. The hashtags kept trending, anonymous accounts kept posting threads. Witnesses crawled out of the woodwork, offering second-hand stories and contradictory details. Every time we cut one head off, two more seemed to grow in its place. "They're not letting go," I said finally, tossing my phone onto the table like it had burned me. "Even with the evidence, they're just mutating the story." Eryx was standing by the window, his reflection layered over the glittering skyline. For once it didn't lag behind him, it matched perfectly, as if he'd decided to be still. "They won't let go," he agreed, voice quiet. "Not while the scent is still in the air." I turned to look at him. "Then we keep starving it. We wait it out. No," he said, and it was almost gentle. "There's another way." Something in his tone made me sit straighter. "What way?" He came over, leaning against the edge of the table across from me. "I can smother it, strip the air from the fire until it dies on its own." "That sounds great. Why does it sound like you're leaving out the part I won't like?" "Because I am—" His gaze held mine steady. "It would cost me. More than I've paid in a very long time." I frowned. "Cost you what? Money? Access? What?" "My strength," he said simply. "The part of me that pulls them in. The power to gather eyes and hold them there. Without it, I'm just interesting. Not irresistible, I'll still be able to work, but slower, less certain, and I will be vulnerable in ways I haven't been for centuries. The words landed like stones in my chest. You're telling me you'd give up a chunk of who you are, for this, for them? For you, he said without hesitation. I blinked, caught between disbelief and something sharper. Eryx, this is your oxygen. This is the thing you've built everything on. You can't just— I can, he interrupted. And I will. I'm not doing it for the business. The business will recover eventually, with or without me at full strength. But you— He stopped, and for the first time since I'd met him, looked almost uncertain. You didn't sign up for a life where your name trends for all the wrong reasons because of me. I'm not going to let you burn just so I can keep every shard of my crown. I got up, closing the space between us. You don't have to do this. I can handle the noise. I've handled worse. Not like this, he said. This is sustained, designed to exhaust you. It's not a battle, it's a siege. And they will keep going as long as there's any blood in the water. My throat tightened. So what? You make yourself weaker so I can breathe easier? That's not a trade I want. He smiled faintly. You think it's noble to refuse. It's not. It's stubborn. I wanted to argue. I wanted to tell him that I didn't need protecting, that I wasn't fragile enough to justify this kind of sacrifice. But under that was a selfish, guilty thought. If he does this, maybe the noise really will stop. Before I could find the words, his phone buzzed on the table. He glanced at it, then handed it to me. The message on the screen was from security. One line: "We have proof. Kyle's been feeding the other side." I exhaled, a mix of satisfaction and anger tightening in my chest. So it's true. Eryx nodded. He's already been removed from the building. His access is gone. What happens to him now? That's up to him, Eryx said, too evenly. If he's smart, he'll vanish quietly. If he's not, well— I studied his face. And you're not going to take his reputation? He tilted his head. Not tonight. I have other things to spend my strength on. It hit me then. He'd already decided. You've made up your mind, I said. Yes, Eryx. He stepped closer, resting a hand against my jaw, his thumb brushing my cheek like he was memorizing it. Max, let me do this. Not for the headlines, not for the brand, for you. The quiet between us was thick. My pulse pounded in my ears. I wanted to tell him no again, but the words stayed trapped in my throat. Finally I said, if you do this, it's not because I couldn't handle it, it's because you wanted to. His lips curved. Agreed. I didn't watch the moment it happened. He moved to the window, the city stretching below like an open palm. The air in the room shifted, warmth draining, replaced by something cooler, thinner. The faint hum I'd always felt in his presence softened, dimmed. When he turned back, his eyes still held their depth, but the sharp, impossible pull was muted. He was still Eryx, just quieter. And for the first time since I'd met him, I thought he looked almost human. The morning air on the rooftop was crisp, cool enough to carry the scent of the city, coffee from the cafes below, faint diesel from the waking streets, and the metallic tang of dew on steel. From up here, the skyline didn't look like power or money. It looked like possibility. Eryx stood near the edge, his hands resting lightly on the railing, the early light drawing a pale halo around him. The effect was different now. Gone was the subtle shimmer I'd always felt in his presence, that magnetic hum that made rooms bend toward him. Without it he didn't look diminished, just more grounded, like he'd stepped fully into the same world as everyone else. And yet his eyes, they were warmer now. Less like polished glass, more like amber, holding something alive inside. You're staring, he said, not turning around. I'm observing, I corrected. There's a difference. Finally he looked at me over his shoulder, the corner of his mouth lifting. And what's your conclusion? That you're still you. Just without the neon sign flashing above your head. He chuckled softly, turning back to the view. It feels strange, quieter, like walking through a crowd and not hearing the constant whisper of my own name. Do you miss it? He thought for a moment before shaking his head. Not right now. I stepped closer, close enough to feel the warmth of him against the cool air. You know, I was afraid I wouldn't recognize you after. That maybe without all of that, I gestured vaguely, you wouldn't be, you, and I was wrong. My voice came out steadier than I felt. Because I paused, then let the truth drop between us. I don't love you for the way the world looks at you. I love you for the way you look at me. Something shifted in his expression, something unguarded. The breeze tugged at his hair, but he didn't move, didn't blink. You're sure about that? Absolutely. A long silence stretched between us, not uncomfortable. Then he reached for my hand, threading his fingers through mine. The gesture was simple, but it felt like a seal, like the closing of a chapter neither of us had realized we were writing. Below I could see the press gathering in the street, cameras ready. No doubt someone had leaked our plan to leave together. Old habits die hard in this business. You know, I said as we headed for the elevator. If we walk out there like this, it's going to be all over the news by lunch. Good, he replied without hesitation. We rode down in silence, his thumb brushing over my knuckles, grounding me more than I'd admit out loud. When the doors slid open into the lobby, I caught sight of the small crowd through the glass entrance. Flashes ready, microphones poised. This time, we didn't detour through a side exit. We walked straight ahead, side by side. The questions started before we'd even reached the doors. I felt the old reflex to shield him, to manage the optics. But his hand stayed in mine, and we stepped out into the noise together. For a heartbeat the chaos felt almost welcome. And what now? I murmured as we pushed through the crowd. Without your powers, you can't exactly bend the press to your will. He glanced at me, the sun catching in his eyes, and smiled in that way that still hit me square in the chest. Don't worry, he said. I'm still damn charming. Especially for you.